DEA fantasies, or some of the fantasies that are still being portrayed on the public right now is that, well, first of all, the whole thing, the notion that marijuana is like 20, 30 times stronger than it used to be. Well, first of all, what's funny about that is, you know, those commercials where they show the loser guy who sleeps on his parents' sofa, is not getting anywhere with his life. Those are like all my friends back in Texas who smoke like the bad Mexican stuff, right? All my friends in Los Angeles who smoke the medical grade, you know, and I'm speaking for most of them, drive expensive cars, live in multi-million-dollar houses, doctors, lawyers, writers, actors, game show hosts, you name it. And they're all gainfully employed. These are not like loser people. And so it breaks through all the stereotypes, I'm sorry. It does. And as far as the gateway thing goes, you know, I myself, from my own experiences, know that alcohol is the gateway. I mean, I've never once in my lifetime, I mean, I used to do cocaine back in the 80s. I played in a rock band, used to tour around. I've never once in my life gotten really stoned and said, I gotta go score an 8-ball of Coke tonight. It's just never happened. It's never once happened. And I just know plenty of pot smokers, especially in LA right now, who they're just happy with the weed that they have, and they have no interest in like going on to the other drugs. That's why, to me, alcohol is like the #1 gateway drug. It is, and it always will be.
But sugar.
Yeah, sugar's a gateway drug too. Yeah, there's plenty of gateway drugs. You know, that's just it. But the point is like, okay, even if you want to like say, okay, yeah, marijuana is a gateway to, and it's because maybe it's a gateway for you, but then why should it be like categorized differently than all the other gateways? Like, what gives them right? Yes.
Well, did you start drinking or did you start smoking first?
Me, I can't. You know, back as a little kid, there's times where I snuck alcohol out of my parents' bar, and times where my older brother had marijuana. So I can't really tell. It's probably sometime around the same time.
There's a large percentage, substantial. I mean, over 85% of people who try marijuana have tried either alcohol or tobacco first. So, you know.
But to me, here's one of the things is like right now, like one of the statistics that they use when they go into all these rehab centers, and they go, oh my God, look at all these heroin addicts over here. They all started with marijuana. Look at all these crystal meth users. They all started with marijuana. Look at all these, you know, all these other hard drug users, crack cocaine users. They all started with marijuana. But usually, most of those people, they also probably drink beer and smoke cigarettes as well. So to me, it's like all these people that use harder drugs. Well, yeah, marijuana is also on their dossier, which is why when the way they get these statistics about marijuana being this #1 gateway drug is because anybody who does harder drugs also, yes, does smoke pot. But if you know anybody who does crystal meth, you pray for that moment when they're just smoking pot, because that's like the coolest that they're ever going to be. That's actually the harm reduction in the thing. And I'm not a big pothead. I smoke a little tiny bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon, whatever. It's helped me stay off of like the heavier medications that I was taking for my back injuries from back when I used to race motocross. I don't really like being all that stoned or the feeling of being stoned, and I don't like drinking at all because I watched both of my parents die from alcoholism. So, you know, whatever. I understand that these arguments are going to be made forever, but I just want everybody to keep it, just realizing here that this is an argument about money, and that's really all it's about. And the more people that we can get involved with this thing and stay involved with this thing, not just on 420, but all the way around the year, and the more people that can get involved with this thing that aren't just, you know, interested in being smokers too, is like the most important, because this is an issue as important as racism or equality or anything like that. This is like a fundamental freedom issue.
I think we're ready for questions.
I think we have time for about 3 or 4 questions. So, start with Dr. Bob.
This is not a question, a little comment. Marijuana is a gateway for getting off of other drugs.
It's the gateway out, not the gateway in.
Help me get a Moxicon.
Scientifically, it's unambiguous, and we see it all the time in dispensaries around the country at this point, that people who have been on narcotics for long periods of time have no life because they're constipated and addicted. They start using cannabis, they displace and replace their other drugs completely. And there's a scientific foundation for all of this as well, but it's a gateway out, not the gateway in.
And I would just like to address, you know, the gateway situation. I think we really need to define, there's obviously a correlation or association between the use of harder drugs and the use of marijuana, but it's been proven essentially to be non-causal. In other words, the use of marijuana doesn't actually cause someone to use other hard drugs. And what's important to understand is that it's actually marijuana's illegality that is, if anything's a gateway to other hard drug use, it would be the illegality of marijuana, and that if there's millions of marijuana users, and there's millions of alcohol users, and there's, a few 100,000 harder drug users. And if you were a marijuana-only user, and are you more likely to have exposure to hard drugs through your marijuana dealer or through a liquor store?
Good point.
So in other words, you're being steered into a black market where there's other illegal products potentially available. And if most people only want to use marijuana, we should be steering them towards a legal market where they can't get access to it.
Well, in fact, what Mason is talking about is the very basis of the 35-year, very successful Dutch system. The Dutch system is predicated on this very premise that there are distribution channels. If you combine cannabis in the same distribution channels, with in this case crack or methamphetamines or opiates, then that is the closest you're going to get to putting cannabis in the hand. And think about the profit incentive. Those drugs can be adulterated. Those drugs are highly addictive. I mean, if you've got the worst stereotype in your mind of the proverbial drug dealer at the end of your 8th grader's schoolyard, in the Netherlands, they take that, they acknowledge that if that 15, 16, 18-year-olds are engaged in that, then they're going to have access to it in at least a quasi-legal way in the Netherlands. Marijuana is a drug of terminus. That's kind of the irony of it all, is that it's really a drug of terminus, not a gateway drug. The vast majority of Americans will use caffeine, alcohol products, tobacco products, and cannabis products. Very few people, relatively speaking, will go on to use any type of psychotropics or get habituated to opiates or cocaine or its derivatives. Thankfully so, I would say. So, yes, the gateway theory has been roundly put aside over these years. It's funny that we still talk about it.
Well, really quickly, one final thing to add on the gateway theory, which I find fascinating, is the gateway theory is really the government, when they push that, acknowledging that marijuana itself is not very harmful. Because instead of them saying, marijuana is really harmful, don't use it, they're saying, we realize that marijuana is not that harmful, but it might lead to harmful stuff. And so, essentially, I honestly think, I'm pretty skeptical of the government, and I think, well, I guess I should say cynical, and I believe the government's incredibly smart. They realized, hey, we got to get rid of this talking point because we're essentially acknowledging that marijuana is pretty safe. So that's why they don't say it anymore.
I think we have time for one more question. The state of medical marijuana has already begun, but again, we're going to have a panel on marijuana reform, past, present, and future. We'll go through it.